very honored to be here with two very brave, strong women who are fighting cancer. Lynn and Joan, Lynn Skoda and Joan Kiley, are fighting cancer caused by a powder distributed by Johnson & Johnson, baby powder that had asbestos, talc powder that has been discontinued, but only after literally tens of thousands of women suffered cancer as a result of Johnson & Johnson failing to warn and to take this product off the market, even though they knew what the risks and the damage was that their product was causing. Now, Johnson & Johnson needs to be held accountable for the harm that it caused, because these women have not only suffered, but they have paid substantial amounts of money to deal with the cancer that Johnson & Johnson caused. But far from acknowledging its responsibility, Johnson & Johnson, in fact, has done a legal two-step, called a Texas two-step, that takes advantage of a loophole in the current laws to purposely evade accountability for the harm that it's done. Very simply, in October of 2021, it spun off a subsidiary known as LTL, pushed all of its liability to the tens of thousands of women who had already filed lawsuits or were going to do so into this subsidiary without assets sufficient to cover even a fraction of the costs and damage caused to those women. It pushed liability into a subsidiary created for the purpose of sparing Johnson & Johnson any of the responsibility financially or morally. Johnson & Johnson earns $97.7 billion last year. $97.7 billion. In April of this year, it settled those lawsuits for $8.9 billion, an amount totally inadequate. Johnson & Johnson is avoiding responsibility, refusing to face liability, and using the Texas two-step to create a subsidiary that has all of the liability and virtually none of the assets. And that's permitted under our current law, but it's being challenged by a number of the women who have suffered this damage. And I hope that its misuse and distorted resort to this bankruptcy process will be rejected by the Court of Appeals that heard this case very recently. The court should reject Johnson & Johnson's attempt to evade responsibility, but Johnson & Johnson itself ought to do the right thing. It ought to acknowledge its accountability and provide these women and literally 70, 80,000 others with what they deserve in terms of money damages. Now, money's not going to compensate for all the pain and suffering, and sometimes worse, that women have been caused by this product. But it is at least a start. And Johnson & Johnson owes it to them. They owe it to the public. They owe it to consumers. And my hope is that Johnson & Johnson will do the right thing and do right by these women and say, we're going to reverse our bankruptcy filing for LTL. We're going to have our company, which last year earned $97.7 billion, pay what these women deserve. And we're going to say the Texas two-step is not our ticket to getting out of responsibility. We're going to do the right thing. That's what we're asking Johnson & Johnson to do. and my hope is that it will. And with that, let me turn it over to Lynn.
I would just like to thank Senator Blumenthal for championing this issue. In 2017, I was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer. I suffered through a radical hysterectomy in recovery, 5 sessions of chemotherapy, a 2-week hospitalization for severe sepsis, and reconstructive surgery. This all happened right after I started a new job and had no sick time. Later, DNA testing determined my cancer was not genetic and fortunately would not be passed down to my daughter, but it also revealed that it certainly could be caused by my mother innocently powdering me at every diaper change and bath and enjoying my sweet baby smell. She had no idea what that meant for my health later on in life. Johnson & Johnson knew. Thank you.
Joan?
My name is Joan Kiley. I'm from Southington. And this is a picture of my family when I was going through chemo for ovarian cancer. My story is their story. My story is my friend's story. We never fight alone. From the shock of diagnosis, every treatment, every test, all the chemo, blood transfusions, the physical effects of chemo, the psychological effects of chemo, the exhaustion, we all went through it together. And we were wondering if I was going to live or if I was going to die. To this day, we collectively hold our breath with every ongoing appointment and test. All of our lives changed. We are all affected by Johnson & Johnson's decision to knowingly sell products that made so many women sick. So it is never one person's story. So many are impacted. No one should ever have to fight alone. We can't make it alone. So thank you to Senator Blumenthal and everyone helping us to fight this injustice. We appreciate everything, and please keep fighting for us. Thank you.
Thank you. We will keep fighting. There's no question that we will keep fighting. And the Judiciary Committee had a hearing on this situation a number of weeks ago, and I think the outrage was common to both sides of the aisle. Both Republicans and Democrats feel that this situation has to be remedied with legislation. But in the meantime, these women deserve justice, and Johnson & Johnson can assure justice to them, do right by them, by withdrawing its bankruptcy filing and acknowledging legal as well as moral responsibility. And even if it doesn't acknowledge moral responsibility, at least it can do the right thing and give these women justice. In the lawsuit that they filed, 70,000 women or more deserve better. Johnson & Johnson has engaged in stock buybacks, in payments to stockholders, using its billions of dollars in profits to better them, not to do justice for these women. And its resort to a legal technicality that's available, a loophole in the law, is really reprehensible. So we're going to keep fighting. Thank you.
Thank you.